flagged, let me introduce another of the key architects of this outlined transport strategy, Dave Hodgson. Dave is the Mayor of Bedford and the Chair of the Heartland Strategic Transport Forum, and he's now going to really take you through his view about what are the major factors driving this new 30-year plan. So, Mayor Dave, what's it all about? What's in this vast tome that you've produced?
Cool. Well, thank you very much, and good morning. It does take me back many years ago. Before I got into politics, I was a lecturer and put into a body like this as my first internship with actually no idea because my senior lecturer had failed to turn up. I am better prepared today, but it might not appear so. So the first thing, as many have said, it's a vast area, from Swindon to Cambridgeshire, from the west to the east, from Northamptonshire down to Hertfordshire, where we are close to the southern border. A population of over 5.1 million, and one of the three regions that are net contributors to the Treasury, with currently an economy of £155 billion. It's worth noting that, as has been said, we were founded just under 5 years ago in 2014, and its value and potential was noticed, and Lord Adonis and the NIC noticed it and copied us and thought it's a great idea to do this. So the STB predates the ARC in terms of our vision for that. And it's important to look at the potential we have within the sub-region in terms of where we can go. Can we double, can we treble our net contribution to the economy? But the growth we have has actually come at a cost. As you travelled here, many of you, if you've come here by car, you will have been caught up in some of the traffic that actually seems for no reason to actually block and then unblock as we move forward. And that instance of network is actually struggling actually to cope. Minor incidents, and some roads, minor incidents, just somebody braking unnecessarily, can actually clog up and cause disruption of the network. The unreliability of the network, the lack of resilience, have a negative impact on the environment, on the economy, and on the quality of life of our residents. And it's important we must remember the residents that actually live here, the businesses that have actually created that wealth, and how do we work with them to make sure they see the benefits of this growth. Now, growth should not and must not be at the cost of our environment. That's urban, rural, natural and built environment, nor at the cost of the existing residents and businesses. The quality of life is what makes the Heartland a special place for its existing residents and attractive for inward investors. I'm lucky enough to show some inward investors around Bedford's borough and actually the difference it makes to be able to show them the range of places we have to live, some of the wonderful villages, some of the actually historic towns that people can live in. And that quality of life, that variation, is one of the reasons that businesses want to come to move to the England's economic heartland. And we mustn't ruin that as we strive for the growth. I mentioned the environment. An interesting bar chart. This is the average global temperature of the world from 1850 to 2018. And if we think that the impact of people are listening to the tweets from the President of the Free World, this might actually be something he should look at and see the real impact. I'm sure we'll be sending the slides round. You might want to look at and figure out where the cold years were sort of some decades ago. But we've got to remember that we actually are responsible for this, and we actually do what we can to make sure our environment is protected on a much wider scale than just very locally. So set against that, and it's been all previous speakers have actually said this, set against that, today we're launching the outline transport strategy for England's economic heartland. So we're actually doing this. You have got a copy. Please have a look through it. And as we said, we do want people to engage. That's the whole purpose of actually publishing this. It's a major milestone towards the development of a transport strategy for 2050. We want to have conversations with businesses, with communities, to achieve the zero carbon by 2050. And it can't be business as usual. We can't continue to do what we've done for the last 50 years. Now, if we look back the last 30 years, this is a 30-year plan to 2050, what's happened in the last 30 years? So the first shopping service was started in 1995, just 24 years ago. And if you want to place an order then, you had to place it in by fax. How many people have still got a fax machine? Please raise this interactive bit. We've got 1 fax machine, 2 fax machines. How many people have got a fax machine that they don't know where it is? Okay. Is it still plugged in? Does anybody send you a fax? The picture there is of Magdalen Street in Cambridge in the 1990s, and then now as the Cambridge Core traffic strategy has been put in place. It's not just about change in the future. We need to look back at what change has happened. I'm going to try and age you all. How many people here have used and still have used a slide rule? Okay, look at your neighbours. If they haven't, they're younger than you. On the way down, just having a discussion about new technologies, try putting a dial phone. You know the ones when you spin round? Right? Try and put it in front of somebody that's under 25 and see if they have a clue how to actually make a phone call. Anybody here not know what a dial phone is? If you want to pretend to be young, just put your hand up. So looking back at what the technology is, what's the change? We don't know the unknown unknowns, and we need to make sure we actually work with that. So transport will continue to change. The consequence of lifestyle changes, travel choices, and expectations will continue to rise. The growth of data, rising consumer expectation, the need to change our relationship with the environment. The way we move around the heartland will fundamentally change, or could change, in the next 30 years. What's the air quality impact? How will we actually tackle climate change? How do we actually use the digital accessibility? Booking online. I'm still amazed. I still don't dare ever buy tickets on my mobile phone in case it runs out of charge. The fear of running out of charge on a mobile phone. We've heard about it in electric cars, but it's actually true on mobile phones. You've got your ticket online. Social trends towards shared workspace. I know in Bedford Borough we're seeing even more shared workspace and agile working, as people don't feel, as the workplaces say, they don't have to come into work, they have to get the work done. Access to services and disruptive businesses. Uber and Airbnb have changed the way we look at businesses. And what are the next ones that will come along? We're a region of potential. So on this map, the white blobs are life sciences. And you can see around the south west corner and the northeast corner, 2 sort of clusters around life sciences. The greens are the digital. We've got a spread of those around that. The oranges are aerospace. And you can clearly see they go across the whole corridor, the whole area. And in the blue in the north, we've got particularly high-performance technology and motorsports. But growth must go hand in hand with improvements to the quality of life. How do we link these businesses? How do we get the growth? How do we grow these high-worth businesses across our region? But the reason's not in isolation. It's always fun when I talk to our colleagues in Transport for the East and say roads don't have an end and beginning. They don't in the heartland. Clearly in the east of England they do. You hit the North Sea. But within the within the heartland, we don't. We're linked to the east, to Felixstowe and the Energy Coast. Northamptonshire has links to Midlands Engines and beyond to the Northern Powerhouse. Heathrow, we wrap round it towards the southern area. Links to Luton Airport are important. And today, as has already been mentioned, we announced England's Economic Heartland's priorities for the first 5 years of the Major Roads Programme. This investment in 11 schemes across the region will be submitted to government later this month for their review and final approval, and it marks the next step in the investment plan for England's Economic Heartland. The infrastructure planning and consideration, as we're looking towards what people expect, we need to actually make sure that we can get people to work, get people to home, get them to do their leisure. We need to make it easy for people to travel that can travel easy, but we also need to make it easy for people that have more complex barriers to their travel needs. Transport and the ability to actually get round a region is an important facility to allow everybody to achieve their aims. And this is actually summarised in this slide. So we need to actually make sure that we actually work with all in society, and particularly the younger generation, who will have a particular need and will see transport entirely differently than we do. Today I'm also launching a competition. We're inviting students, postgraduates and professionals in the early stage of their careers to submit up to 500 words on how they believe the Heartland transport system can fulfil our vision, but up to 2050. Importantly, the deadline is Friday the 13th December. Since I haven't got a time, I assume it's midnight. So we want to have an idea. So please encourage people in your own organisations, whether it be students, engage with schools, engage with graduates, postgraduates, young professionals, say what does they see their vision. We really don't know what the next 30 years will bring. 30 years ago, will we even imagine the iPad existed? I did have a colleague when actually was offered his first mobile phone and told that he had 50 free texts, said, why on earth would I want to text somebody? I have a phone, I can phone them. He now regrets saying that because so much stuff is done by text. There's a whole range of stuff. Even the technology we have, we don't know how we use it. So set against all this, I want to encourage you to review the outline transport strategy, to think about how your business can become involved and how you think we can work to strengthen our ambition. We want to hear from you, whether it's in the forum or the business unit. Please actually engage with us. Put in submissions. If you want us to come to a group, to talk to a group, to actually hear their points of view, we really want to do that. We must, as an England's Economic Heartland, engage with the whole of our community to make sure we get their feedback so we can make this vision a reality. Thank you very much.
Dave, I do remember dial phones. 4434 was my number when we were growing up. Those days of 4-digit telephone numbers. Do we miss them? Oh, yes. Anyway, a question has flooded in on Slido that I thought I'd share with you, Dave, which is around, it was good to hear that the Heartland is not just about the Arc. Now, you're based in Bedford, we're here in Hatfield, but of course, the region is vast. How do you make what you're doing in this plan relevant to everywhere in that region?
Well, if you just look at the major road networks, if you look at the 11 schemes we're putting forward, those actually will impact on the vast majority, if not everybody in the region. They'll all use those roads and those networks at some stage. They all know some of those pinch points that are so critical to their daily lives. And if we can improve those, we can improve everybody's quality of life.
But you've got rural areas, you've got urban areas, and there are huge differences in people's lifestyles there.
Indeed there are, but not many of the people in the rural area stay in the rural area all day, every day, 365 days a week. We need to improve more than just the road and transport networks. To actually make their transport better, we need to actually look at some of that infrastructure, particularly the digital infrastructure. But those people will come in to go to meetings. They will come in to do shopping, we hope, in town centres, and they move around for leisure. And they do get stuck in those junctions. Some of our worst junctions, one of our worst junctions is actually on a Sunday when 3 churches throw out and people go to a shopping centre. You wouldn't think Sunday should be a bad at a junction, but it can be. It's not all about work days.
Dave, thank you very much indeed. Thanks for sharing. We're going to have more questions to Mayor Dave a bit later on, so keep them coming in on Slido. And also think of them, write them down so you can put them to him live. But thank you very much, Mayor Dave. Right, a little bit more flesh on the transport strategy plan. Let me introduce Naomi Green. Naomi is the head of the technical programme for the Heartland, and she's going to take us through some of the details. So, Naomi, what's in it? What's in it for us all? Naomi Green.
Thank you very much. As you've heard, today marks a really significant milestone for us as England's Economic Heartland Business Unit. I'm really excited to have published the transport strategy, and I'm really excited at the feeling that this is a major milestone that just starts a lot more work for us. So what closes starts again, which is brilliant. So we very much look forward to working with you over the next year. As you've heard, the vision for our transport strategy is connecting people and places with opportunities and services. It feels simple, but ultimately it is the fundamental of the principles of the National Infrastructure Commission into the Oxford to Cambridge Arc. It's about people and places and what they need. People need houses, they need access to jobs, they need access to new jobs, they need access to skills, they need access to services. Businesses need access to staff, they need access to training, and they need access to the supply chain. Clusters need access to each other, they need access to innovation, and they need access to networks that can cross-fertilise and stimulate aspirations and ideas. And sectors need brands, and they need to be recognised as a sector. They need to be supplied, they need a supply chain, they need to be able to export and import. And they're all the things that through connecting people and places with opportunities and services, we as EEH need to deliver for them. But fundamentally, to deliver on this vision, we need to do it with a transport system that delivers a zero carbon network by 2050. And I pause there because for some of us, 2050 may feel too far away. The forum have already been challenged on that by some of the members of the public who attend the Strategic Transport Forum. As you go through the transport strategy and think about how you would like to engage with us, think about whether we've got those targets right and whether they are a deliverable or whether we could do more. But what we need to do alongside that is to think about what needs to be done differently to solve these opportunities and challenges. The result of this work will be merging what is currently a series of discrete housing markets and functional economic areas to one that is better connected and interrelated and will deliver the economic growth ambitions that Mayor Dave and Martin and the Minister have already mentioned. But how do we move from these ambitions into actually delivering them on the ground? Well, I'm going to talk to you today about some of the work that we're doing already to start to kick off the process up to 2050. So, first of all, connecting people, the first chapter of the strategy. This map shows the current driving times into Milton Keynes. The Heartland is polycentric in nature, with major urban centres interspersed with growing towns and many smaller villages and communities. We need to build on them in a way that enables the whole to be bigger than the sum of its parts, and to do that requires improved connectivity. The strategy is about addressing the connectivity gap and looking at where barriers to travel exist. And to do that, one of the things that we are doing is we've created a regional database, which you will hear a bit more about this afternoon when we talk about the major road network. The regional database does much more than just inform the major road network, although it's a very significant piece of work to shape the evidence that justifies why we need that investment. And on top of it, we're creating a scenario policy tool, which will allow us to project options for the future and map what might happen to the network with different scenarios. What if we did this? What if we did that? Based on evidence, it will inform the way that we can work with you as partners and with the government to plan the future that we need. And I think at this point I will just mention partners. As Martin said earlier, we have a lot of partnerships, and the collaboration that we need to achieve delivery of this transport strategy is very significant. The reason why we're going through a period of engagement as we are is because we we could have written a transport strategy in the team working with the forum, but actually across our partnerships, there is a vast array of expertise. And for us, the most sensible thing to do was pull in that expertise and make the most of the knowledge that we don't have, but others do. So just going back to Milton Keynes, this is the map of their public transport network. So this map showed the routes into Milton Keynes by road, and the green area is a journey you can make in half an hour. Yellow is between half an hour and an hour, and anything red is up to 90 minutes journey time into Milton Keynes. This is the same map for public transport. It is a totally different set of options for people. It is linear, based on radial routes into London. If you can see just to the south east of Milton, of the bit which you can access, is Luton. Luton is 23 miles away from Milton Keynes, but it takes an hour and 45 minutes to get there by bus. So in developing the transport strategy, our approach to connectivity will seek to address connectivity for local journeys, ensuring that users have access to convenient, attractive and safe transport options and allowing them to make active and inclusive transport option choices as well. It will look at national and international connectivity, ensuring that connections between the heartland and neighbouring regions are of a high quality. And it will ensure that we have good access to a supply chain, ensuring that our economy that is dependent on our businesses having the right access, particularly to the freight and logistics sector. But what we don't know, looking at these maps, is how many people want to make the journeys that currently aren't available to them. How do we get an analysis and understand what is untapped demand? It's not an easy thing to do. So one of the pieces of the work that we're delivering at the moment is to understand the people that live in the heartland. I accept that this is on current basis and on the current analysis that we have available to us. This map shows the personas of people based on Experian data, and it's broken down into hexagonal kilometres. There is a group of different types of personality personas. I will pick up 3, if I may, just to help you get a sense of the heartland at the moment. So first of all, we have aspiring homemakers. Aspiring homemakers make up about 13% of the population of EEH, but in areas like Marston Vale, they're up to 28%. These are younger homeowners, largely in full-time employment, settling down in housing that's within their means, often with young families. But they are people who tend to have an interest in technology and are motivated by trying new things. Their propensity for change is high, providing we get the pricing right. Secondly, and further towards the south, you can see the sort of swathe of purple. They are people in prestige positions. Inevitably, they are fueled by access into London at the moment, and what we don't know is how improving east-west connectivity will change the choices of where people who are in that category, or indeed any of the categories, live and work. And finally, the swathe of green. The green represents country living. Actually, it's not a huge proportion of the population. 7% of the population in EEH represent that persona of country living. People who tend to be well-off homeowners in small rural towns enjoying the benefits of country life. They tend to have 2 cars. They tend to have quite high internet use, so they are willing to work with technology, but very car dependent because of the places that they choose to live. What's interesting about this category is that while it looks very green across the area, the proportion is relatively low. But to EEH, that population is very, very important. And today, the University of Hertfordshire is launching, through their new Smart Mobility Research Unit, a Transport for Counties initiative, which Stephen Joseph will talk to you about later. The idea of this is to focus on issues that counties are facing outside of the main metropolitan areas, working with district authorities to explore the different but very significant transport challenges that those communities have, just as many of the communities in the heartland face. So moving on from connecting people, looking at connecting places. We've already, as an area, achieved some really major successes in connecting places. East West Rail, as you will well know, will see services restored between Oxford and Cambridge more than 60 years after the closure of the old Varsity line. This map shows that the East West Rail corridor crosses 6 of the arterial routes into London. It will fundamentally change the choices that people have about the way that they move across the country. But the benefits of these major investments will only be realised if accompanied by a complementary programme of investment in connecting infrastructure, not just road and rail. This is about interchange. And in Cambridge, one of the projects that they're working really hard on is Cambridge South Station, a new rail station that will support the major economic growth area in the south of the city that supports the life sciences cluster. But those major infrastructure investments need to be complemented by smaller interchange points that serve local communities. And as part of the EEH programme of work, we're going to develop an investment plan that will identify all of those opportunities, large and small, that are needed to achieve the ambitions of the area. I'll talk a little bit more about the investment plan later in this session. So our third chapter is about connecting opportunities. This is fundamentally about how we need to work with the local enterprise partnerships and our other local partners to unlock the local industrial strategies and the wider economic growth opportunities of the area. I put this slide up, I stole it off Bidwell's with their permission, and it shows the most significant and really powerful message. This is about what's important to large R&D businesses when they choose locations to base themselves in. And public transport hubs is the most significant thing that they look for. That is really powerful, but we need to be able to act on that. The pressure on the transport networks that we have in our area have grown, and Mayor Dave was talking about that. So for us, investment in improved connectivity is playing a key role in widening labour markets and supporting new opportunities for economic growth. And each of these options and the routes that we take for economic growth will have implications on the scale and nature of future demand. And they also represent challenges and opportunities on the way that we deliver a zero carbon transport system by 2050. For us, the answer to this is working with the business community, local enterprise partnerships, local partners, businesses, the innovation sector, to help us identify what we can do to unlock some of these opportunities. We already have an innovation working group who seek to capture the expertise of the area, working with the Connected Places Catapult, and to act as a catalyst for some of the businesses that are developing anyway. Work with us. We are a testbed that we can work with you to try some of the ambitions that you have. And just building on this message about the role of public transport hubs, in the transport strategy, you'll see some future visions. This is a future vision for a business park. You will see that by removing the use of the floor space for car parking, either by autonomous vehicles parking in towers or by much greater use of public transport, we can completely change the working environment. Mayor Dave talked about things like working hubs and shared working facilities. That's the kind of thing that we're moving towards. And to do this, we need to work with our planning authorities and businesses to shape what is really possible for the businesses and the services and the sector that we serve. And finally, connecting services. Today, we're publishing our freight and logistics study. It was a major piece of work for us and one of the first pieces of evidence to inform the transport strategy. EEH includes 7.7% of the UK population, but 8.9% of registered HGV journeys start in the heartland, and 9.5% of registered goods journeys end in the 9.5% of journeys end in the heartland. Therefore, we have a higher than average proportion of journeys and demand from the freight sector. We also need to recognise the need to future-proof the freight and logistics needs of businesses, industry and our people. 20% of retail sales are now recorded online, and that is changing rapidly. And we need to be able to support the freight and logistics sector to respond to that challenge. But also freight and logistics is critical to realising the region's economic potential. B&W in Oxford produced almost 220,000 cars in 2017, and they're heavily reliant on their connections in with rail freight to unlock the delivery of all of that output. So rail freight, road freight, it matters enormously to our businesses. This summary of our freight and logistics study will be available in the break, and Anthony Swift, who led the project from the team, will be there to talk to you if you want to have a word with him about the conclusions of the study and what we're going to do next. So we are going to act straight away on the freight study. These are some of the key recommendations that we would like to take forward, endorsed by our forum last week. First of all, we'd like to develop a freight data repository, improving the quality and availability of data for the region. This is a really significant piece of work, and it's a gap that many of our local authority partners kept raising with us, that we don't have access to enough freight information. So at subnational level, we should be able to help with that, and that's a real area that we should be adding value. Secondly, as we look to deliver some of our major new pieces of infrastructure, East West Rail, major road investment, we need to make sure that they meet the needs of the freight sector. We need to look at things like lorry parking and look at where we can provide the support, building it in from the outset, not retrofitting. We also need to maximise rail freight opportunities. This is a real opportunity, working with East West Rail and other rail lines across the area to see what we can do to unlock the potential for rail freight. And we need to work with partners to develop regional standards and best practice for freight regulation. We need to support people and represent them in government so that we can make the necessary changes. During the work on the freight study, we've been working really closely with the National Infrastructure Commission, and Nick Francis from the Commission is here today and will be speaking later, to make sure that our study aligned with the National Infrastructure Commission's work on freight. And that's been a really successful kind of opportunity for us, making sure that we are pushing on the boundaries of what's possible on the freight sector. Recently, the officials from DFT received a copy of our freight study and are keen to work with us to understand how they can support us to implement some of the recommendations that we've got. And finally, working with our partners in the local enterprise partnerships who already have really active communities with the freight sector, we need to create a freight forum, a transport-focused freight forum that doesn't add burdens to businesses that want to work with us, but represents the fact that we can achieve an awful lot at the sub-regional level. But underneath all of that, we need to plan to invest, and we need to deliver. So alongside over the next year of engagement and shaping and improving of the transport strategy to final publication next summer, we're going to develop a programme of investment. This needs to be sub-regional, and it needs to be long-term. We need to do that by defining what we want. And in the outline transport strategy, you'll see questions about the kind of performance indicators that we think we need to start measuring. And from that, we can start designing what we think needs to happen in terms of an investment strategy. But we also need to work with the market. We need to understand the role of the public sector and the private sector in future investment planning. That's really important, and I know you're hearing some more about those kind of opportunities later today. And finally, we need to be able to deliver this stuff. So one of the projects that we're working on with partners at the moment is improving the capacity and capability for infrastructure delivery, looking at where those points are in the infrastructure cycle where risks get higher, de-risking projects, giving government certainty that when they commit to funding, that we will be able to deliver within those numbers. And finally, for us, alongside the development of the transport strategy, we need to start seeing delivery and delivery and delivery. So we will continue to work with our partners and with government to make sure that this isn't just about talking in warm words. This is about delivering something that will really change and support our communities and businesses in the future. Thank you.